You're pathetic. A nobody who cleans toilets. Brandon Hayes, head MMA trainer at Iron Will Combat Academy, poured his protein shake across the floor James Turner had just mopped. Then he grabbed James by his janitor uniform and shoved him backward into the mop bucket. Water splashed across the 42-year-old black man's clothes. 80 people watched. Nobody intervened. Brandon dragged 15-year-old Darius Johnson forward and threw him against the cage. This kid wastes his time with you instead of training with me. So here's the deal. Tomorrow night, 8 p.m., 3 rounds in that ring. You fight me or he's banned forever and you're fired. The crowd expected James to beg, to refuse, to run. Instead, James slowly raised his head. His hands were perfectly steady. His voice was quiet and controlled. I'll be there. What Brandon didn't know would change everything. By tomorrow night, 200 people would witness something unforgettable. 3 weeks earlier, Sarah Mitchell stood in this exact spot introducing Brandon Hayes to her gym staff. Brandon comes to us from Vegas, former amateur champion, 12 wins, 2 losses. She smiled with pride. His training methods are intense, but our competition team needs that edge. James had been cleaning windows that morning. Through the glass, he watched Brandon shake hands with the other coaches. Watched how Brandon's grip lingered too long, how his smile never reached his eyes, how he sized up every person in the room like they were either useful or in his way. Sarah continued, I know some of you have concerns about his reputation, but intensity isn't cruelty. This is a fight gym. These kids need to learn toughness. James said nothing. After 2 years working here, he'd learned that janitors were invisible. People talked around him like furniture. The problem started on day 3. Week 1, Tuesday evening class. Emma Rodriguez, 12 years old, struggled with her kickboxing stance. Her back foot kept sliding. Brandon made her hold a plank position. When I say hold, you hold. His voice carried across the gym. This is what happens when you don't listen. 1 minute passed. Emma's arm shook. Please, I'll get it right. Quiet. 2 minutes. Her whole body trembled. Other students watched in uncomfortable silence. 3 minutes. Emma collapsed, started crying quietly in the corner while class continued around her. Her parents sat in the observation area. They exchanged glances, shifted in their seats, said nothing. Membership at Iron Will cost $300 a month. They didn't want to cause problems. After class, James brought Emma a water bottle, hidden from Brandon's view. Thank you, she whispered without looking up. James just nodded, went back to mopping. Week 2 got worse. Thursday night. Marcus Chen, 14, moved wrong during mitt work. Brandon's punch, supposed to tap the mitt, caught the kid's face instead. Hard. Blood poured from Marcus's nose. That's on you. Brandon didn't even pause the class. You zigged when you should have zagged. In a real fight, you'd be unconscious right now. Marcus's father half stood from his seat, started to say something, then sat back down. The gym's competition team had won 3 regional tournaments since Brandon arrived. Results mattered more than methods. James cleaned the blood off the mats after everyone left that night. The stains came out easy. Blood always did if you got to it fast enough. He found himself thinking about Tommy Garcia, about promises made 13 years ago in a desert that felt like another lifetime. Week 3, Brandon's attention shifted to Darius Johnson. Darius had been coming to the gym for 6 months, but his story started before that. 7 months ago, James caught him spray painting the gym's exterior wall at 2 in the morning. The kid had talent. The mural was actually good, but it wasn't his wall to paint. Sarah wanted to call the police. James made her a different offer. Let me handle it. He'd made Darius a deal. Clean off every bit of the graffiti, help with janitorial work after school for 3 months. Learn what real discipline looked like. Why should I? Darius had been defensive, angry, 15 years old and already halfway to a prison cell. Because the alternative is cops, a record, and doors closing before you're old enough to know what doors even exist. Something in James's voice made Darius agree. Over 6 months, things changed. Darius's grades went from D's and F's to B's and C's. He stopped hanging with the kids who'd end up dead or locked up. He found boxing, discovered he was good at it. More importantly, he found someone who listened without judging. 3 months ago, taking out trash together, Darius had said, "You're like the dad I wish I had." James felt something catch in his chest. You're doing all the hard work, son. I'm just here. But you're always here. That's the point. But Brandon noticed the bond, saw how students asked James for advice instead of coming to him, watched his authority being quietly undermined by a man who pushed a mop. That janitor is making these kids soft, Brandon told Sarah one afternoon. The office door was cracked. James was in the supply closet. He heard everything. James has been here 2 years, Sarah replied carefully. The kids trust him. Trust doesn't win championships. Fear and respect do. He needs to understand his place. The microaggressions started small. Brandon scheduled brutal conditioning drills right after James finished mopping the mats, forcing him to clean again. He accidentally knocked over protein shakes on freshly cleaned floors, made comments to students about ending up like the janitor if they didn't work hard, left his gym bag in the middle of the floor where James had to work around it, called him the help instead of his name. James never responded, never gave Brandon the reaction he was fishing for, just kept working, kept his head down, kept his promise. In his janitor closet, behind cleaning supplies, James kept a small metal box. Inside were his dog tags from the Marines. He'd take them out sometimes during breaks, run his thumb over the engraved letters. Tommy Garcia, the tags read. Below that, a date, and words worn smooth from 12 years of touching. Protect the kids. I'm trying, brother, James would whisper to the empty closet. I'm trying my best here. Yesterday afternoon, everything escalated. Darius had worked a double shift at his after-school job at the grocery store. Hadn't eaten since lunch. Came straight to the gym for Brandon's conditioning class. Halfway through burpees, Darius stumbled, caught himself, kept going. Pathetic. Brandon's voice cut through the gym. You're weak because you spend too much time talking to the janitor instead of training. Darius, breathing hard, made his mistake. James isn't weak. He's taught me more about discipline than a professional fighter? Brandon's eyes lit up, like he'd been waiting for exactly this moment. Then someone who's actually accomplished something with his life? The entire class went silent. 30 students, 20 parents, everyone sensing something ugly about to happen. James is a veteran, Darius said, voice smaller now. He's helped me with... Darius. James's voice came from the corner, quiet but firm. That's enough. But it was too late. Brandon had smelled blood in the water. A veteran? Brandon circled Darius slowly. So the janitor has a backstory? What were you, old man? Army? Marines? Reserves? James kept mopping. Doesn't matter. I'm not that person anymore. See this? Brandon addressed the whole room now. This is what quitting looks like. You serve your country, then you give up and push a mop while real men do real work. James's hands tightened on the mop handle. His knuckles went white, but he kept mopping, kept his eyes down. Brandon wasn't done. You're teaching these kids to settle, to accept mediocrity, to be invisible. That's when Brandon made his move, kicked James's bucket, grabbed his shirt, poured the protein shake. That's when everything that happened next became inevitable. Tonight, standing in his small apartment, James held Tommy's dog tags up to the light. Tomorrow at 8 p.m., he'd have to decide if staying silent was keeping his promise to Tommy, or breaking it. The gym felt smaller with 80 people packed inside. Thursday evening, 7 p.m., Iron Will Combat Academy at full capacity. Every mat occupied, every bench filled, the observation area standing room only. Brandon ran his advanced conditioning class. Burpees, sprawls, mountain climbers. The kind of workout that separated fighters from pretenders. Darius Johnson was 30 minutes in. Shirt soaked, legs burning. He'd worked a double shift before this, hadn't eaten since lunch. Faster! Brandon shouted. Darius pushed through another round. His vision blurred. He stumbled, caught himself, kept going. Brandon stopped the class. Everyone freeze! Darius, step forward! 40 students stopped, breathing hard, waiting. Darius walked to center mat. His legs shook. You just stumbled. Why? I'm tired, coach. I don't care. Brandon turned to the gym. This kid spends more time with our janitor than training. Look at the results. James was mopping near the equipment rack. James isn't why I stumbled, Darius said. No? Brandon's tone was mocking. Tell me, what has the janitor taught you that I haven't? The gym went silent. Darius straightened despite the exhaustion. He taught me discipline isn't about how hard you can push someone. It's about being there even when it's hard. Brandon laughed, a harsh sound that echoed. Hallmark card philosophy. That's not how champions are made. He taught me real strength means controlling yourself, not controlling others. Darius's voice gained confidence. And that being kind doesn't make you weak. Listen to this. Brandon addressed the whole gym, mocking, theatrical. The janitor's teaching life lessons, between mopping floors and taking out trash. He turned back to Darius. Your mentor is 42 years old and cleans toilets for minimum wage. That's what his discipline got him. Is that what you want? Murmurs spread through the gym. Parents shifted uncomfortably. Students glanced at each other. This felt wrong. Everyone knew it, but nobody spoke. James chose this job, Darius said. I don't know why, but I know he shows up every day. He's patient. He listens. He's pathetic. Brandon cut him off, walked toward where James stood. Look at him. Invisible, ignored, pushing a mop while real men build careers, train fighters, accomplish something. Brandon stopped 3 feet from James, raised his voice so everyone could hear. Tell them, Janitor. Tell these kids why they should listen to someone who gave up on himself. James kept his eyes on the floor. His hands gripped the mop handle. His jaw was tight. I'm just here to clean, Coach. That's right, you're just here to clean. Brandon turned back to address the gym, making sure everyone saw. This is what happens when you settle, when you stop fighting, when you accept being nothing. He grabbed James's mop, yanked it from his hands, threw it across the gym. It clattered against the wall. Look at me when I'm talking to you. James raised his head slowly, met Brandon's eyes, said nothing. That's what I thought. Brandon's smile was cruel. He turned to get his protein shake from the bench, made a show of it, took a long drink. Then he walked back to James and poured the entire thing across the freshly mopped floor. Pink liquid spread across the clean mats, pooled around James's feet. Oops, looks like you've got more work to do. Laughter from some students. Uncertain, uncomfortable, but laughter. Brandon wasn't finished. Matter of fact, he grabbed James by his uniform, the fabric bunched in his fist. Let me help you get started. He shoved James backward, hard. James stumbled. His back hit the mop bucket. Water exploded across his clothes, the floor, splashing several students in the front row. James went down, sat in the spreading puddle, didn't get up. The gym went completely silent. Even the students who'd laughed stopped. This had crossed a line everyone felt, but nobody named. Darius stepped forward. That's enough! Brandon spun, grabbed Darius by the shoulder, dragged him toward the training cage, threw him against the chain link. The metal rang out. You want to defend him? You want to spend your time with a quitter instead of learning from me? Brandon's voice rose. His face reddened. Fine. Here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow night, 8 p.m., your precious janitor gets in this ring with me. 3 rounds, or you're banned from this gym forever, and he's fired. The crowd expected James to refuse, to beg, to make excuses, to leave. That's what invisible people did when confronted. They disappeared. Instead, James slowly stood. Water dripped from his clothes. His movements were deliberate, controlled. He picked up the fallen mop bucket, set it upright, walked to the equipment rack, put away the mop. The gym watched in complete silence, every eye on the janitor. Then James turned, looked at Brandon. His hands weren't shaking. His voice was quiet, calm, certain. I'll be there. The silence stretched. Brandon's smile faltered, just for a second, because there was something in James's eyes, something that made the gym feel colder. Good, Brandon recovered, forced his grin back. 8 p.m. tomorrow. Don't be late, janitor. James walked toward the locker room without responding, past Darius, stopped, put a hand on the kid's shoulder. It's okay, James said quietly. Go home, rest, I'll handle this. James, it's okay, son. After James left, the gym erupted in whispers. Darius stood frozen against the cage. Sarah Mitchell appeared from her office. She'd watched everything. Brandon, we need to talk, now. Nothing to talk about. Brandon was still high on adrenaline. The janitor accepted, fair fight, everyone saw. This isn't everyone saw, Brandon repeated, louder. Right? Murmurs of agreement, uncomfortable but agreement. Sarah's face hardened. My office, now. In the locker room, James sat alone on a bench. His wet clothes stuck to his skin. He touched the dog tags under his shirt. Closed his eyes. I know, Tommy. I know. He'd promised. 13 years ago in that desert. Promised a dying friend that he'd never use what he'd learned in combat again. That he'd protect kids through presence, not violence. Through patience, not power. That he'd be different. But sometimes, brother. James opened his eyes, stared at his reflection in the mirror across from him. A 42-year-old man in soaked janitor clothes. Someone the world didn't see, didn't value, dismissed without looking. Sometimes the only way to protect them is to show them what real strength looks like. He stood, changed into dry clothes from his locker. Tomorrow night would change everything, for better or worse, but it was time to stop being invisible. That night, James sat in his small apartment. One bedroom, kitchen barely big enough to turn around in, furniture from thrift stores, the kind of place invisible people lived. On his kitchen table sat his phone, 23 messages. Most from Darius, some from other students, even one from Sarah. He ignored them all. Instead, he opened the small metal box, took out Tommy's dog tags, read the engraving for the 1,000th time. Protect the kids. 13 years ago, Afghanistan. James Ghost Turner and Tommy Garcia had been part of a force recon unit. Marines, the best of the best. Tommy had been the team medic. James had been their close-quarters combat instructor. Before that, he'd been a Marine Corps martial arts program instructor at Quantico. Black belt. Multiple deployments. He knew 17 different ways to end a fight in under 3 seconds. Could disarm, disable, neutralize threats before they knew what was happening. His call sign, Ghost, came from how silently he moved, how efficiently he worked, how thoroughly he disappeared threats. Tommy had been different. Where James was silent, Tommy talked. Where James observed, Tommy connected. Tommy treated every wounded soldier, enemy or ally, like they mattered. He'd once spent 4 hours under fire keeping an insurgent alive, not because it was strategic, because it was right. Everyone's someone's kid, Tommy used to say. Everyone's someone's son. Their last mission together had been supposed to be routine, escort a supply convoy, protect a school that was reopening. Tommy had been excited about the school. Those kids are getting books, Ghost, real books. After all this, that matters. The IED hit their second vehicle. The ambush came from 3 directions. James did what he did, moved like smoke, eliminated 7 hostiles in under 2 minutes, cleared the threat before the rest of the unit even got into position. But Tommy's vehicle had flipped. He was pinned, bleeding out. By the time James got to him, they both knew. Listen. Tommy's breathing was wrong, wet, labored. I need you to promise me something. Save your energy, medevac's coming. Ghost, listen. Tommy grabbed James's vest. His grip was weak. You're the most dangerous person I've ever known. You could teach killing better than anyone, but promise me... He coughed, blood on his lips. Promise me you'll teach kids something different. Well, what do you mean? How to be strong without hurting people. How to have discipline without violence. How to protect by being present, not by fighting. Tommy's eyes were losing focus. You've got all this skill, all this knowledge. Use it to show kids there's another way. Promise me, Ghost, please. I promise, brother, I promise. Tommy smiled. Good. That's what matters. Protecting kids, being there, not the fighting, the being there. He died 20 seconds later. Medevac arrived 90 seconds after that. James had kept his promise. Left the Marines 6 months later. Couldn't be around combat anymore. Couldn't teach killing. Couldn't be Ghost. For 13 years, he'd been invisible, taken jobs where nobody looked at him, where nobody asked questions, where he could keep his head down and his promise intact. The janitor job at Iron Will had been perfect. He could be around kids, could listen, could be present without being seen, could show them strength through quiet example, until Brandon Hayes, until tomorrow. James set down the dog tags, walked to his bedroom closet, pushed aside old clothes. In the back, wrapped in canvas, was a heavy bag. He hadn't opened it in 13 years. Inside were hand wraps, gloves worn smooth, shorts, gear from another life. He touched the bag. Didn't open it. Not yet. I'm sorry, Tommy, he whispered. But sometimes the only way to protect them is to stop being invisible. Friday morning, 6 a.m. James arrived at the gym 3 hours before anyone else, used his key to let himself in. The empty gym echoed, quiet, peaceful. He didn't turn on all the lights, just enough to see. In the supply closet, he found what he needed, a ladder. The gym's banner that hung over the ring. It was 10 feet tall, said Iron Will in bold letters with the gym's logo. James took it down carefully, folded it, set it aside. From his car, he brought in something else. A banner he'd spent all night making. Simple. Black fabric. White letters. 6 feet tall. He hung it above the ring where everyone would see it. Where Brandon would see it. The banner read, "Discipline is not domination. Strength is not violence. Protection is not control." Below that, in smaller letters, "In memory of Staff Sergeant Tommy Garcia, USMC." James stepped back, looked at his work. "Hope this is okay, brother." 8 a.m. Sarah arrived. Saw the new banner immediately, stopped in her tracks, walked slowly across the gym, reading it. Found James in his usual corner, mopping. "James." Her voice was soft. "I didn't know you were Marines," James said quietly. "Long time ago, different person. The way you carry yourself, I should have guessed." She looked back at the banner. "Tommy Garcia?" "My best friend. He died believing there was a better way to teach strength. I've been trying to honor that." "And tonight?" Sarah's question hung in the air. "Tonight I show these kids what he meant." James kept mopping, kept his routine. "But first, I have floors to clean." Sarah watched him for a long moment. "James, you don't have to do this. I can ban Brandon, press charges for assault. You don't owe anyone." "I owe Tommy," James interrupted gently. "And I owe Darius, and every kid in this gym who thinks strength means dominating people. Brandon's not the problem. He's a symptom. The kids need to see something different." "You were a combatives instructor, weren't you?" Sarah had pieced it together. "Quantico, Force Recon, hand-to-hand combat specialist." James paused his mopping, met her eyes. "The Marines called me Ghost. I could end fights before they started. I've forgotten more about fighting than Brandon will ever learn." "Then why have you been invisible?" "Because being seen meant being that person again. And I promised Tommy I wouldn't be." He went back to mopping. "Tonight's not about being Ghost. It's about showing these kids what strength really looks like." Throughout the day, word spread. The janitor versus the head trainer. 8 p.m. Fight to the finish. By noon, the gym's parking lot was full. By 3 p.m., people stood outside. By 6 p.m., fire marshal capacity became a real concern. 200 people packed into a gym built for 80. Students, parents, former members who'd left because of Brandon, local fighters curious about the spectacle. Someone had posted about it on social media. A journalist from the local paper showed up. 3 people live-streamed from their phones. Darius arrived at 7. Found James in the supply closet. The kid's eyes were red. "James, don't do this. I'll quit the gym. I'll apologize to Brandon. Whatever it takes. You don't have to." "Yes, I do." James was wrapping his hands. Old muscle memory. He did it without thinking. "Not for you. For all of them." "What if he hurts you?" "He won't." James's voice held certainty that made Darius go quiet. "But son, I need you to understand something. What you see tonight, this isn't about fighting. It's not about winning. It's about showing everyone what Tommy meant." "Who's Tommy?" "The man who taught me that being dangerous isn't the same as being strong. That having power means knowing when not to use it. That the hardest fight isn't against someone else. It's against the part of yourself that wants to hurt them." James finished wrapping his hands. "Watch closely tonight. That's the real lesson." Darius nodded slowly. Started to leave. Stopped. "James, whatever happens, you changed my life. I need you to know that." "You changed your own life, son. I was just there." "That's what I mean. You were there. That's what mattered." James hugged him. "Go on. Find a safe spot to watch." After Darius left, James sat alone, closed his eyes, breathed. This was it. 13 years of being invisible, of keeping his promise, of staying silent. Tonight, for one night, he'd break that promise. And maybe, in breaking it, finally honor what Tommy had really meant. 7:45. James walked out of the supply closet. The crowd noise dropped, heads turned, whispers spread like wildfire. The janitor wasn't in his uniform. He wore simple black shorts, a gray tank top, hand wraps. His feet were bare. As he crossed the gym toward the ring, people got their first real look at James Turner. At 42, his body still carried the evidence of what he'd been. Scars on his shoulders and ribs, muscle that came from function, not aesthetics. The way he moved, smooth, economical, aware, spoke louder than any resume. Sarah stood by the ring. She'd cleared the mats, set up proper safety equipment, brought in a referee she trusted, set rules, 3 rounds, 3 minutes each. If someone couldn't continue, it was over. She looked at James, questioned silently if he wanted to stop this. James shook his head, climbed through the ropes, stood in his corner, looked up at Tommy's banner. For the kids, brother, just like you wanted. 8 p.m. Brandon emerged from the locker room to applause from his supporters. He wore full fight gear, gloves, shorts, mouthguard ready. He'd trained, prepared. This was his moment to put the janitor in his place. He climbed into the ring, saw James's corner. His eyes went to the banner above them. Read it slowly. His confidence wavered, just for a moment. Then he saw James standing there, 42 years old, former janitor, someone he'd humiliated yesterday. Brandon's smirk returned. You actually showed up. Respect. Too bad it won't matter. James said nothing. The referee called them to the center, explained rules. Protect yourselves at all times. If I say stop, you stop. If either of you can't continue, it's over. Touch gloves. Brandon extended his glove mockingly. James touched gloves, held Brandon's eyes. Brandon saw something there, something that made him step back. Ready? The referee asked. Both fighters nodded. Fight! Brandon came out aggressive, exactly what everyone expected. Combination, jab, cross, hook. James slipped all 3 punches. Didn't counter, just moved. Brandon threw a low kick. James checked it. A knee. James deflected. Brandon backed up, circled. Not gonna fight back, old man? James stayed in his stance. Perfect guard, weight balanced. He looked like he'd been carved from stone. Brandon attacked again, a 6-punch combination, fast, powerful, the kind that knocked out amateurs. James slipped, parried, blocked every single shot, didn't throw back. The crowd murmured. What's he doing? Someone asked. Brandon was breathing harder now, frustrated. Stand still! James didn't. He moved like water, like shadows. Every punch Brandon threw seemed to miss by millimeters. James's feet shuffled, his head bobbed. His hands were always exactly where they needed to be, never where Brandon expected them. Fight! Brandon screamed. Threw a wild haymaker. James ducked under. For the first time, got close. Brandon felt James's presence, felt how fast he could move, felt the control. Then James stepped back, returned to his guard, didn't attack. Round 1 ended. Brandon stumbled to his corner. He'd thrown maybe 40 punches, connected with none. His arms felt heavy. James walked calmly to his corner, breathing normally. Sarah offered water. What are you doing? Teaching, James said. Round 2. Brandon came out desperate, threw everything, punches, kicks, knees, elbows when the ref wasn't looking. James avoided it all. Never countered, never attacked, just demonstrated perfect defense. The crowd was silent now, watching something they'd never seen. This wasn't a fight. This was a lesson. Brandon's frustration peaked. Why won't you hit me? James spoke for the first time, his voice carried across the silent gym. Because strength isn't about hurting you, Brandon. It's about choosing not to. That broke something in Brandon. He charged, sloppy, reckless, left himself completely open. James could have ended it. 1 punch, 2, maybe 3 seconds of work. Brandon would have been unconscious. Instead, James caught him, controlled him, wrapped him in a standing guillotine choke. Not tight, just there, holding. You see? James's voice was quiet. Only Brandon could hear. I've got you. Right now I could put you to sleep in 3 seconds, but I'm choosing not to. That's what I've been teaching these kids. That's what Tommy meant. Brandon struggled. James controlled him effortlessly. Real strength is knowing you could hurt someone and choosing something better. Discipline isn't about dominating others, it's about controlling yourself. Protection isn't violence, it's being present when it matters. James released him. Stepped back. Let Brandon catch his breath. The referee looked confused. Continue? James nodded. Brandon stood there, hands at his sides. He wasn't fighting anymore. He was understanding. Round 2 ended. Brandon didn't return to his corner. He stood in the center of the ring, took off his gloves, dropped them. The crowd went silent. "I'm done," Brandon said. His voice cracked. "You made your point." James walked to the center. "No, Brandon. You missed the point. This was never about me beating you. It was about showing you, showing everyone, that having power means knowing when not to use it." Brandon's eyes welled up. "My dad was a fighter. He taught me strength meant never backing down, never showing weakness. And if someone challenged you, you destroyed them. I thought that's what these kids needed." "Maybe that's what you needed," James said gently. "But it's not what they need. They need to see that strength can look different. That discipline includes compassion, that the hardest fight is against your own worst impulses." The gym was dead silent, 200 people holding their breath. "I've been Ghost for 20 years, James continued. "The Marines' best close-quarters combat specialist. I could have ended this fight in the first 10 seconds. Instead, I spent 2 rounds not hitting you. Because that's what Tommy taught me. That's what really matters." He turned to address the whole gym. "Every kid watching tonight needs to understand this. Being tough doesn't mean being cruel. Having skill doesn't mean using it to hurt people. And real courage isn't about fighting. It's about choosing something better." Brandon dropped to one knee, put his face in his hands, started crying. James put a hand on his shoulder. "You okay?" "No," Brandon choked out. "I've been doing this wrong. All of it, my whole life, I've been doing it wrong." "Then start doing it right," James said. "It's not too late." Sarah climbed into the ring. The referee, other coaches, they surrounded both men. The crowd erupted, not cheering, not exactly. It was something else, recognition maybe, of witnessing something real, something true. Darius pushed through the crowd, climbed into the ring, hugged James. "That was incredible." "No, son, that was necessary. There's a difference." James looked at Brandon. "He's going to need support, not judgment. We all need chances to be better." Brandon looked up. "Why are you being kind to me? After everything I did?" "Because 13 years ago, my best friend was dying in my arms, and he made me promise to protect kids, not by being the most dangerous person in the room, by being the most present, the most patient, the most understanding. You're somebody's kid too, Brandon, even if your dad forgot that." The night ended not with violence, but with conversation. James, Brandon, Sarah, the coaches, they talked for 2 hours after everyone left. About new policies, about trauma-informed training, about what strength really meant. Brandon shared about his father, about learning that love and pain were the same thing, about never being good enough unless he was hurting someone. James shared about Tommy, about Afghanistan, about 13 years of being invisible because being seen meant being Ghost again. "But tonight," James said, "I realized Tommy didn't mean for me to disappear. He meant for me to show kids that someone dangerous could choose to be gentle, that someone powerful could choose to serve, that someone skilled could choose patience. Being invisible wasn't keeping my promise. It was hiding from it." Sarah wiped her eyes. "What happens now?" James looked at the banner still hanging above the ring. "Now I keep cleaning floors because someone needs to teach these kids that work matters, consistency matters, showing up matters, not just in the ring, in life. And I start over," Brandon added. "Find a therapist, deal with my stuff, learn to coach without breaking kids." "We all start over," Sarah said. "New policies, better training, real accountability." The clock read past midnight when they finally left. James was the last one out. He stood in the empty gym, looked at Tommy's banner. "How'd I do, brother?" The gym was silent, but James felt something. Peace, maybe. For the first time in 13 years, he'd stopped being invisible. Not by being Ghost, by being James. The video footage from that night went viral within 48 hours. Someone's phone footage titled, "Janitor Shows MMA Coach What Real Strength Looks Like." 5 million views in 3 days, 10 million by week's end. The comments exploded. "This is what masculinity should look like. Notice he never threw a punch to hurt. That's mastery." The real fight was saving Brandon, not beating him. News outlets picked it up. Local first, then regional. A national morning show requested an interview. James declined. "I'm not a hero," he told Sarah. "I just did what needed doing." But the attention had consequences. Good ones. 2 weeks after the fight, Sarah called a staff meeting. All coaches, all instructors, James in the back. "What happened can never happen again," Sarah said. "We're implementing new policies, anti-bullying protocols, mandatory trauma-informed coaching training." She looked at James. "And James has agreed to consult on our youth program. He won't coach directly yet, but he'll help ensure we're creating the kind of environment Tommy believed in." The coaches nodded. Most had seen the video. They understood. 3 weeks after the fight, Brandon walked into a coffee shop downtown. He wore work clothes, paint-stained jeans, dusty boots. Construction work paid bills while he figured things out. Darius sat at a corner table doing homework. Brandon almost left, almost walked right back out, but Darius looked up, made eye contact, waved. Brandon approached slowly. "Hey, can I sit?" "Sure." Awkward silence. Then Brandon said, "I'm in therapy, dealing with stuff about my dad. I wanted you to know I'm sorry. Really sorry." Darius closed his textbook. "James said hurt people hurt people. You were hurting. That's not an excuse." "No," Darius agreed. "But it's a reason. And you stopped. You're trying. That counts." Brandon's eyes welled up. "James saved me that night, not from losing a fight, from becoming my father." They talked for 20 minutes. Not friends yet, but not enemies. Just two people trying to figure out who they wanted to be. 2 months after the fight, a young Marine in uniform walked into Iron Will, visiting family, heard about the viral video, wanted to see the gym. James was in the janitor closet when the Marine walked past. The Marine stopped, stared. "Ghost Turner, is that you?" James felt his stomach drop. "I don't go by that anymore." "Sir, you taught my combatives course at Pendleton in 2013. The Marine's face lit up. "You're a legend. What are you doing as a janitor?" "I found a different mission," James said. "Sir, you changed my life." The Marine's enthusiasm was genuine. "You showed me violence isn't strength. Control is. I use what you taught me every day." James felt something shift. "Then you learned what I couldn't teach myself for a long time. Thank you." The Marine left. James sat in his closet for a long moment. Maybe Tommy's legacy was bigger than either of them had known. That afternoon, James watched Darius sparring with one of the new coaches. Sarah had hired a veteran, former Army, trained in trauma-informed methods, the kind of coach Tommy would have been. A younger kid, maybe 12, got frustrated during drills, threw his hand wraps down. Darius stopped his session, walked over. "Hey, that's not how we do things here," Darius said gently. "What do you know?" The kid was defensive. "I know anger feels like strength, but it's not." Darius crouched to the kid's level. "Real strength is choosing something different. Someone taught me that. Want me to show you?" The kid's defensiveness cracked. "Okay." James watched from his corner, mop in hand. Watched Darius become the person someone had been for him. Watched the cycle of hurt stop. Watched a new cycle begin. He touched the dog tags under his shirt. "We did it, brother. Not the way either of us expected, but we did it." His phone buzzed. Sarah texted, "Brandon asked if he could volunteer, help with equipment, be around kids in a healthy way." "Thoughts?" James typed back. "Everyone deserves a chance to be better, even coaches." That evening, as James mopped floors one more time, he heard laughter. Darius and the younger kid practicing, the new coach giving encouraging feedback, the sound of people learning without fear. The gym radio played quietly, same station as always. James hummed along. Someone knocked on the supply closet. Brandon stood there looking nervous. "I know I don't deserve this," Brandon said, "but Sarah said you approved me volunteering. I wanted to thank you and ask what you need." James gestured to equipment needing organizing. "Start there. And Brandon, yeah? You're not volunteering to make up for what you did. You can't undo that. You're volunteering to become who you want to be next. Remember the difference." Brandon nodded. "I will." They worked side by side in silence. A former Marine and a former bully, both trying to be better. Outside, parents dropped off kids for evening classes. Inside, students practiced with coaches who saw them as whole people. In the office, Sarah planned the gym's future with new principles, and in his corner, James Turner pushed a mop across a clean floor, making it cleaner, doing the work that mattered. Not a hero, not a legend, just a man keeping a promise. The promise Tommy had really meant. Not to never fight, but to fight for something that mattered. To protect kids not with violence, but with presence. To show them strength could look different than what the world taught. Every single day. The hardest fight of all. James paused his mopping, looked around the gym, at Darius teaching a younger kid, at Brandon organizing equipment, at Sarah planning better policies, at students laughing while they trained. This was what Tommy had asked for. Not a gym, not a program, just one person showing up, being present, choosing love over violence every single day. James went back to mopping. The work was never finished. The floors always needed cleaning, but that was okay. Because showing up for work that mattered, work that helped kids, work that kept a promise to a friend who died believing in something better, that was the real fight. And James Turner planned to keep fighting it for the rest of his life.